Hello, everyone. Welcome to LoFi History, another Tuesday with LoFi History. And we've got Glen, we've got Marie, and we got myself, Libba. And if you're just joining us, so this is your chance to ask historians Glen and Marie basically any history question that you want, and you can see if you can stump them. You can see.
Don't say that. Don't say that, Libba.
There's always something. There's always something that'll stump you.
We have our area of expertise, and then there's the things
The
outside
other
of that.
The other stuff, yes.
And we tried to remember from our surveys so long ago.
Yes. I'd love to know, what are y'all wearing?
All right, so I am wearing what a Tudor middling sort or peasant might wear. I have this nice wool kirtle, so that would be what
kirtle.
is a kirtle. That is your overdress, but sometimes you also have an overdress over your kirtle. But I'm poor, so we don't have that. But I'm doing more of a Ren Fair vibe with my kirtle. If this was actual Tudor England, I would have like actual long sleeves, but this is my 17th century shift that goes under it. They would have a shift that goes under it. It would be a different style though. I ran out of time before I went to the Ren Fair and was just like, you know what? It's Ren Fair. We're gonna mix up some centuries. So this is my 17th century shift that's on under it. Of course, sunglasses, not period, and then also, but I mean, flower crowns have always been around.
Flowers did not get invented until, what, 1920?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So flower crown goes with the fair maiden vibe, but flower crowns have always been in fashion, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think so. Well, very good. So you got sort of a Renaissance festival vibe going on.
Tudor peasant fair maiden lady.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, Glen, what do you got going on? You got some fringe there.
I'm dressed as a farb.
A farb?
Oh,
A farb.
All right. What is a farb?
Now we're going into reenacting.
Oh no! Here we go.
Yes, well, this is something our listeners have been dying to know.
Oh, really?
Of course they have. So, in the world of reenactment and living history, there are some people who don't take it very seriously at all, and they just wear whatever they want because it's comfortable, because it's convenient, because it's cheap. Those of us who practice this as some sort of profession call those people, and there's a lot of grief about this, farbs.
Farbs.
F-A-R-B.
The reenacting F word.
Yes, it's the reenacting F word, a farb.
Sometimes
People
Barbie.
are farbs.
Barbie. Oh, like Barbie. That's
Yes.
Yes.
Barbie.
This is a very farby outfit because, ladies and gentlemen, I will confess my shame. I have been so busy doing museum-y things today, I totally forgot to bring any cool costumes, and I almost didn't make it down for this wonderful broadcast with these fantastic ladies, and so I just grabbed some stuff off of the rack. This is what you get.
Off the rack.
It's
off.
Yeah.
It's
this season off the rack.
This
you know?
season. It's very
half off.
It's kind of a hunting frock with some kind of hat that we got from somewhere. You never know what you're going to need. You can turn it up. You can turn it to the side. Now I'm a 1920s girl in a 1700s hunting frock with cheap 2020s glass sunglasses.
Love it. Love it.
I'm nothing today, folks.
No.
Let's focus on Marie.
Yeah. So I did want to say hi to our regulars. We've got Fried in the house. Hey, Fried. And 1 second while I think we have I'm going to turn off this noise suppression thing going on. I think it's making our voices a little warbly. That should be better for y'all. So we've got Fried on Twitch. We've got JM. Hey, JM on Facebook. They say Ren Fair vibe is valid. Yes, very valid. And I think the sunglasses are great. Awesome. Oh, we also have Olivia on Twitch.
Yay.
Hey, Olivia. So good to see you.
Now, going back to the Renaissance Festival and a Renaissance Festival-y vibe, I argue that the Renfest vibe is not farby. Because you're not, because generally speaking, the people who go to Renfest dress to have fun. They're not portraying themselves as, this is exactly how they looked in X date or time.
But what about the people who are the cast?
they are pretending to be people from the past, and the entire focus of the Renaissance Festival is entertainment and not education. Despite what some of the Renaissance festivals will tell you,
it's really not.
It's not education at all. That's
well,
why we're
sometimes
here.
They have educational programming at the Ren.
That's
Fair.
true. We have done programs at Ren
That's
Fest
true.
that are very
the Northeast Georgia
educational.
History Center did set up some camps for a while.
Yes.
And brought knowledge to the masses. When they were just there to have fun, we forced them to learn, and they loved it.
Well, and I also have attended one where it was an historical, character, Leonardo da Vinci, talking about his inventions that he done.
Yeah.
So I would argue that while the main purpose of the Ren Fair is not educational, but rather entertainment, there can be education to be had.
Well, one can stumble into it.
Yes.
Certainly.
Yes.
You have to look for it.
Certainly.
Just like stumbling into LoFi History.
Hello!
This is really educational. I see we've got Charlene from Delaware. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Yeah, and thank you, JM, for sharing the stream. Appreciate it. And and maybe the Ren Fair attire might spark conversations. This is true. This is very true. Yes, I mean, what y'all are wearing today would certainly spark some conversations for sure. So
we should just when we can go back out into the world safely, we'll just walk around a Walmart.
Like this?
Yeah. Start conversation.
We'll need to have some kind of spy cam so we can get people's
I know.
reactions.
Yes, that would be hilarious.
Yes.
I've decided to call those, by the way. And you can coin this phrase now. You know how we have the before times?
Yeah.
Yes.
Soon we're going to have the after times.
The after
The
times.
after times when things go back to the way they mostly were. Post-vaccine, post-COVID. We get to see all of our friends face to face and have family days with 200 people here. And all those wonderful things. It's the after times.
Yeah, I really do miss the students being here. It's so much fun. Of course, we love the webcasts. And oh my goodness, we have been inundated with
many webcasts.
So many webcast requests. We've had a ton of webcast requests we've got Thomas Jefferson, we've got Frederick Douglass, we've got Harriet Tubman. We have quite a few. You're even interpreting a soldier from the War of 1812 this Friday. I do
America's best war.
Yeah, in your opinion.
In my opinion.
JM says sponsor a history walk. That would be really fun. And we've done similar things. We did once upon a time have a sort of Halloween themed ghost walk of sorts.
Right.
But I think a history tour would be really fun.
And we worked with the city of Gainesville here where we're located, and we have done a historic walking tour of the square and environs before. We've done several of those again in the before times. And you just have to wait until you get to a good critical mass when you get a good group of 20 or 30 people, and you can really take them around, and then people sneak in and see the big crowd, and they fall in and they get it for free, but that's okay because knowledge should be mostly free.
Yes. Oh, cool. We also have Josh here. Hey, Josh.
Hey,
Good
Josh.
to see you. Hey, Josh. So, Olivia. I think Olivia knows this is your favorite topic, and her question is, for Glenn, 1066. Who, what, where, and why? All right, Olivia, I think we're going to fill
Bye.
Yeah, see ya. No, you get back there. Now, remind me, Marie. Are you familiar with this era of Norman conquest? Is that something that you've researched before, or is it not so much?
I actually have a funny story
Yes.
about how I really was introduced to 1066, and that is my first Oxford tutorial ever when I was studying abroad there.
Oh, cool.
Was assigned about the Battle of Hastings 1066 and the Bayeux Tapestry. I didn't know really anything before this, because this is Institutions of the Medieval West. That's the class I was taking.
Oh,
and of
cool.
course, Medieval West kind of
Right.
starts.
I'm sure in Oxford they assume that means England and some other countries.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Medieval West is basically,
Yeah.
it's them. At least they think so. So I go in and I research and write this usually for my Oxford papers were about 6 pages, about the Bayeux Tapestry, who made it, what, and then we go and I sit down next to Professor Archer, who is in Christ Church at Oxford, and I'm just sitting there with my little paper that I wrote. And then she opens this book that is just like giant pictures of the Bayeux Tapestry, and then she points to it and says, "What's happening here?"
That was like your test?
Yes, and we were supposed to recite the Battle of Hastings based off of what was happening in the Bayeux Tapestry.
Oh my gosh.
I want to take that class.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, you would definitely just ace it, so, you
And
know.
it was me, and like this was the
Bless your
first time
heart.
we ever met her. And
You say, but I'm an American.
I'm just like, I wrote a paper about it. This is all I know. And it's just me and Paul. And Paul was not a history major and knew like less than I did about history because he is not a history major. He was a religion major. And we're just sitting there like, ah. She's like, but what is happening here? I'm like, a battle.
Yes.
100.
And no.
Yeah, right.
She's like, yes, but where in the battle are we? Who is this person? I'm like, how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah,
So anyway,
right.
Glenn, take it away.
Hey.
Yes.
They won't let me spend the entire hour, Olivia. So, the Battle of Hastings, the year of 3 kings, when Edward the Confessor, King of England, dies without an heir. And there is some confusion as to who is going to be the true heir to the throne. These things get tricky. Is it going to be the favorite son of England, Harold Godwinson? Is it going to be William of Normandy, who claims that Edward had promised him the throne? Or some other guy who just happens to be living in Norway called Harold Hardrada, who was probably the greatest warrior of the 11th century at that time. He was a Viking, went to Byzantium, served on the not the Holy Roman Emperors, the Eastern Emperor's personal guard, the Varangians, came back, took the throne, ruled there, and so they all come together, and we could, of course, spend weeks and months as to who actually has the proper right to claim the throne and etc. But this year sees 3 major battles in England. The first one, very few have heard of, Fulford Gate, which is where Hardrada defeats the northern earls of England. Harold, who had been crowned king, by the way, in January. This is in September and October. September comes north with a force, defeats Hardrada, then finds out that just at the time he took the army north is when William came across from Normandy, landed in England, around Hastings, first at Pevensey, then at Hastings, and then so he has to march his army back and fight another battle. And they lose, and because these battles had involved so much of the English, the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy, most of them were killed. And so there was, after the Battle of Hastings, it wasn't just that William won the battle, it's that because of the events of the last couple of months, there basically was no power structure to oppose him, right? All the major Anglo-Saxon leaders were dead from these battles, and all that was left was the church, and the church is going to try to make peace. So, long story short, William is eventually crowned king in the new Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1066, and the rest, as they say, is history.
There you have it.
Puh.
So
I think
I'm
that's
gonna.
the fastest you've ever explained.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say, like,
Impressive.
y'all, I'm gonna put a link to the Bayeux Tapestry. Actually, has its own museum. I did not
Yeah.
realize this.
Yes.
So they've got some information on the story of the tapestry, as well as a way to see it in high definition. So
You know, I was about 800 feet away from that museum.
what? And you didn't
Did you
go?
go in?
Couldn't. I was with a trip of World War II vets, and then I got to go to Normandy with them, so it was a whole other thing, and it was an incredible experience to be there with guys airborne guys who had actually fought, at D-Day.
Wow.
And so we were going to all these battle sites and hearing their stories, and we were passing by Bayeux Cathedral and the museum that they have next to it that has it, and I was looking out the window, and I saw it. There were signs and everything, and I saw it, and I told my buddy Gordon, I'm like, there's the Bayeux Tapestry.
Oh man. Well, one day.
One day. It's just an excuse to go again, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Well, we did have, at one point, for our Battle of Hastings Family Day several years ago, reproduction.
We did. Yeah, the
Yeah.
University of North Georgia has a full-scale reproduction of the tapestry. It is, this reproduction is painted. It is not actually embroidered like the real one, but it is the full height, the full length, and we've had it on display here a couple of different times.
Yeah, it was really cool. I'd love to bring that back in the after times.
Yes.
So we've got a question. We got a question from Josh. And Josh asks, in post-World War II, Austria was divided between the UK, America, France, and the Soviet Union. Can you explain how they got into a country again? Let's see. I'm not sure if I quite understand. Josh, do you mind?
So, you mean how Austria came out of World War II?
Perhaps.
So,
yeah.
Yes.
I see. Yeah.
Let's back up to World War One.
Ooh.
Just a little bit.
Gotta get some context.
You gotta get some context. So pre-World War One, even there was the Austro-Hungarian Empire that had been one of the largest empires in Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, right? And they had Hungary and Austria, obviously. And they had come together because of intermarriages and things with the royal families, and they were incredibly powerful. The problem was they had expanded to the point where they had taken in so many different cultures and societies that were different, right? Language was different, religion was different, that there was a central ruling area, and then everything else was sort of splinters. And it was already on its way out, probably, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But the final kick was being on the losing side of World War I. And after that, it simply broke apart. By the end of literally the last days of the war, the monarchy failed. Different independence groups declared the independence. Austria goes this way, Hungary goes this way. Things continue. Well, Austria had been pretty closely related, culture-wise, language-wise, to Germany, right? So, one of Hitler's aims when he comes to power is to reunite all the German-speaking peoples. That includes Austria. And so he carries out what is called Anschluss, which is basically reunification, rejoining of the Germanic peoples of Germany proper and Austria, and this is a big deal, and this happens. Well, then World War II happens, right? World War II happens, and Germany is obviously defeated, and so they want to weaken Germany. It is split into separate zones that the Allies control, the French, the British, the Americans, and the Soviets, and Austria is split back off from Germany because, again, the whole goal is to make it not a power that's going to start the Third World War in a century. So Austria has its own thing, and Austria has, for a much shorter time, its own forces of occupation until they realize that Austria fully intends on behaving itself, and they come out far quicker than they do with Germany. So, again, history in a nutshell. I hope that answers Josh's question.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh, for your question. That was a great one. Let's see. From Gavi, how did the first toys originate? That's a really fun question. Thank you, Gavi. So, the first toys, it seems like we can go back quite a while. The first interesting looking rock or stick.
Well, yeah. Yeah, boys are going to pick up a stick, right, and start hitting each other in the head. The earliest toys that I know of, if I'm remembering correctly, in the ancient city of Ur and the ruins there that they've done the archaeology, they found a bronze horse and chariot.
Oh, wow.
That could only be, and it's small enough that it could only be a toy.
Yeah.
And so that's the earliest one I know of, but one of the things in human development, this is not so much history, this is a lot of different things coming in. Children have to play, right? The concept of play is so central to the development of humans as they grow older. Play teaches children to use their imagination. It teaches them their boundaries. It teaches them how society works. It teaches them how to do basic things, right? Even like that classic kids' toy. Someday you'll discover this, but I've done it with my two boys. The thing where you put the shapes in the holes, right? Kids love that. And when the boys got those and got that, I sit there and I would play with that thing for hours, right? Because it's basic stuff. It's visual. This seems to fit here. I will now pick it up with my fingers and put it here. So play starts to develop, and the further along you go, that also play reinforces the roles that people are going to have when they become adults in society. Now, different societies and cultures sort of have their own rules and expectations for when a child is going to become an adult, have the responsibilities. Is it a cutoff date? Is it a progression? Different things like that. But play always helps children establish who they are, their role in a culture and in that society, and how those roles are going to be carried on. For example, that horse and chariot, right? A horse and chariot is definitely something that at least a male child probably is going to be doing when they grow up for purposes of war, for purposes of transportation. And so they have created this toy so that someone can play with it, and pretend to be like dad. Just like toy cars today and all those things, they can take that toy chariot and horse and move it around and play and pretend that they're driving and places like that. So, Gabby, that's probably a way deeper than you thought I was going to take when the first toys were. But toys, I would say, have always been with us. And Libba made the joke about, picking up the first rock. I would say it goes back that far. It definitely goes back that far. Kids have to learn how to pick things up and manipulate them and use their imagination, and so it goes.
Now, what were common toys? I mean, when I think of like classic toys, I'm thinking of dolls, of course. But I'm also curious because I know that we've talked a little bit about Native American games, and are there other examples of games and toys from thousands of years ago that are kind of similar to what we play with today?
Yes.
Well, I'm thinking of, in particular, the game that we have the equipment to in the exhibit. I think it's called Chunky.
Yes.
Yeah, and that kind of seems a little bit similar to some games seem similar to lacrosse. I mean,
yeah, there's the Native Americans played a variety of a ball game where different sides would try to take it and either just take the ball and hit an upright post with it or get it through some sort of hoop. And they had different names for that. It seems to have been, broadly speaking, almost a universal game.
Right, yeah.
Right? Of
yeah.
getting the ball through the hoop somehow
Yeah.
with teams. And a lot of those games got very, very aggressive and violent. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Cherokee word for the game, but it translates as Little Brother of War.
Yeah.
Because it got very physical, right?
Yikes, yeah.
And also sometimes playing that to decide a dispute rather than actually going to war.
Yes, exactly. You could still get elbows into people's faces, but without having to
Kill them.
get an arrow into their face, for example. But the toys with wheels, like I said, a chariot and a horse.
Yeah, right.
Boys still, and some girls too, like to still play with toy cars. Right, dolls are, I think, a very, very constant thing. I know there are dolls in Native American cultures, certainly pre-Columbian.
Yeah.
It seems to be a universal, again, because it's part of having a young girl understand what her role is going to be in specific cultures and societies, which in the past universally has revolved around childbirth and child care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And having dolls is going to help facilitate that.
Right. And JM also brings up board games. There's lots of really old board games. One that I recall seeing in a museum when I got to visit England, it seemed almost like a precursor to chess in a way, because there were still pieces that had different shapes or whatever.
Right.
But I'd be curious to know, what's the earliest board game that we've come across?
I know Nine Men's Morris, what we call it, goes way back.
Yeah.
You know what? Have you seen that? Libby, you may want to pull up a thing.
It's like Mancala.
Kind of, it's like a series of squares, and you have to move your pieces from corner to corner of those squares in a smaller and smaller group. I want to say they have found a version of that carved into stone from ancient Roman times.
Oh, here's
and it carries through all the way through the medieval period, through the 1800s, the colonial American period.
Yeah, let me show this picture. This looks like, I guess, medieval-ish. So let me throw this into the stream.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, so we got. I'll make it bigger.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So there's the board of it. I don't know how they're playing it, but it looks really cool.
I think it's kind of like a combination between chess and checkers. Like I said, everywhere there's a corner or an intersection, that's where your piece can land. And you're trying to get your pieces to jump over and capture the other pieces. And of course, if you eliminate your opponent, you win.
Very cool. Neat. Well, thank you, Gabby, for that topic. That was really fun and something I'd love to learn more about. So we also got some more questions. So let's go to our next question. Let's see. JM says, my daughter's cousin just had to write a paper on Richard III and started remarking how royalty kept repeating certain names with Henrys and Richards. Is there a rhyme or reason to it? So what's up with all these names repeating over and over again?
Want me to take this one?
Go it.
All right. So, families do this too. It's not just royalty. There are so many Williams in my family. But it does do this for multiple reasons. The aristocracy, even more so for these reasons, is one, it establishes legitimacy. So it's like, oh, well, it's this William again, or this Henry, or this Richard. Just like the other Richard, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather, and his father before that. But then you have like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just so you know which one it is that you're talking about. Because they are different people, but it establishes the legitimacy of their claim to the throne, of their line. It shows their line of succession. When you think of your family, especially being a royal family, that matters a whole lot, is your legitimate claim, and also how you can trace back your legitimate claim. If you can do that just by your name, by the power of your name, it's just a very effective tool. It also reminds people and harkens back to remember this great person. Hey, like, remember this great monarch? Well, I'm just like them.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see some names that are repeated a lot and some that are not repeated a lot, usually depending on how good of a ruler that person was.
I see, yeah.
Is sometimes why they're more and or less popular. So you want to establish your legitimacy, you want to establish power, easy to trace back your heritage, and also to harken back to the greatness of the former ruler and to embody those qualities within yourself.
And establish a longevity of the dynasty too, right? Mm-hmm. That goes along, it's hand in glove with legitimacy. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just Richard, well, you could come and go any day. But if you're Richard the Fourth or the Third, mm-hmm. there's been enough of a line to show that it is a stable, right? It's a stable royal family. I mean, look at the French. They got all the way up to the 18th, didn't they? On Louis. Yeah. They got all the way up to the 18th. That's a long time to have a French king, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your question, JM. Yeah. And let's see. So, Karen also mentioned, going back to toys, there's in Rochester, New York, there's a Toy Hall of Fame at the Strong Museum, and they also have very basic toys on display, like a cardboard box, a stick, ball, a blanket.
That's what I played with my cousins. My grandma would save so many cardboard boxes.
Yep.
I love that they have that in the exhibit. That's great.
That's pretty good.
Fantastic.
That's a good interactive idea.
Yeah, it really is.
Here's a cardboard box. Have fun.
For kids or cats.
Yeah, right. Olivia has another question. Olivia says, so it's snowing here. Oh, that's cool. We have a few inches of snow. It brings to mind, have there been any famous weather phenomenons in history that you know of? And I can think of one that's very local.
Yes.
So I know about this. So in 1936, I believe it was on April 8th. I know it was in April 6th. Thank you, Glenn.
6th, yes.
So there were 2 tornadoes that combined into one of the strongest tornadoes that still, I think it is listed as the 4th strongest tornado in American history so far. And it was in Gainesville, Georgia, swept through the town. Actually, I'll pull up some photos since there are a ton of photos. There's even video, because this is 1936, of the devastation. So let me Let's see, Gainesville, 1936.
And it's
tornado.
interesting, the reason that video exists, Lib, I can't remember if I told you this or not, but the reason we have the video of the day after the destruction of the tornado is because insurance companies sent guys in to help get ready for all the claims. And so they just brought the camera in and set up a tripod and just did a 360-degree pan of the entire square and other areas around town.
Yeah, so I'll drop this photo in just to give you an idea of the devastation, but it's also a story of triumph because the city had to rebuild. So here you can see this is downtown Gainesville. If anyone has been to downtown Gainesville, if we have locals watching, you can see that this is the middle of what is now the downtown square. And while many buildings were destroyed, there are still many buildings that do exist from this time. And I mean, it was devastating, but it was also a chance for Gainesville to come together, rebuild, and FDR himself, the president at the time, even visited Gainesville to commend the city for rebuilding.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one strange weather phenomenon that I can think of. But as far as like maybe national or even, just worldwide weather phenomenons of history, are there any instances that come to mind to y'all?
I honestly thought you were going to talk about snowpocalypse.
Snowpocalypse. Oh my gosh, that's more recent history.
Yes.
Yes, when anyone brings up snow in Georgia, I mean, we just can't handle it.
We are not that well equipped.
We're not
Olivia,
equipped for
as y'all
snow.
Are.
So
that was
when
the one
there
that was
is
3 or
snow-
4 years ago?
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
Actually, no, because I was in high school.
Okay.
So about.
I guess it was a
It
bit
was about
longer
6 years ago.
Yeah. So, the highways were, like, you could
And
barely drive.
no one expected it, right?
Yeah, no one
Everyone
expected
went
it.
into work, and then at 1 or 2 o'clock it started snowing.
snowing.
A
Yeah.
lot.
And no one had gotten their bread, milk, or eggs.
Yeah, right.
And then everyone decided that the safest place for them was the highway, and caused a massive, massive traffic jam.
Yeah.
To where people I know ended up having to sleep in either strangers' homes or grocery stores or
Or in their
Yeah, I had friends who had to
cars.
leave their car on the interstate and walk.
Yeah. So,
That's
that
it. But that,
happened
again,
not
that's
too
probably
long
more
ago.
us Georgians.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it kind of brings to mind, how would weather in general affect, I'm thinking, would weather affect war all that much, or battles?
Weather is incredibly important to military operations.
Yeah, let's talk about that
What were
for
you
a
going to say?
second.
Were you going to say what I think you're going to say?
maybe.
Maybe.
I'm going to say it, and then you can tell me if it's what you think I'm going to say. The Spanish Armada?
Nope, but that's
No?
that's
Okay.
another great example. That's another great example.
Because during Queen Elizabeth I's reign, the Spanish Armada was attempting to come and take over and invade England. Lots of English in Spain had been kind of going at it, but then they also had been friends, because Philip of Spain had been married to Mary, Elizabeth's half-sister, who had been queen before her. Then Philip wanted to marry Elizabeth. Elizabeth did not want to marry Philip, and then he's like, but I want England. So then he tried to take it. So you have the Spanish Armada, and they are coming in, and then it is, the line is that, God sent the wind.
Mm-hmm.
This wind that basically helped this Spanish Armada just get blown away.
Rake the fleet.
And saved England.
Nice.
Yes.
And then
that one was unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Because we tend to forget, I think, sometimes that we have only had reliable weather prediction since the 40s and 50s, maybe. I mean, Libby, your example of the 36 tornado, right? That system had moved through Memphis the night before, right, and almost killed a very young Elvis Aaron Presley. It had
Wow, I didn't
damaged
realize
his parents' home. Yes.
Wow.
And so the same system comes and hits, middle of Georgia the next day, the next morning. Well, theoretically, people should have been able to communicate, hey, there's a bad weather system coming your way, but the radar wasn't up, the warning systems weren't up, the communication systems, and people didn't tune into TV to watch the weather, things like that, so it wasn't set up.
Yeah.
Only recently the last 50 or 60 years or so, have we really gotten to the point where weather can be somewhat reliably predicted and dealt with? The one I was thinking of, and then we can go on to the next question. There was a fellow named Major Flagg in World War II who supposedly made the world's most important weather forecast. This was on June 4th, 1944, when they were trying to decide if the invasion of Europe would go forward, D-Day. Because remember, they have to there are tens of thousands of men. There's 5,000 ships. There's 20,000 aircraft. They're all having to be brought together and get everything. You can't just say go and then everyone's ready in 5 minutes. This takes days to get ready for. So they get everyone ready, and then just as they're about to go, they realize there's a bad weather system coming through the English Channel, and they had to postpone the invasion for 24 hours. The invasion is set to go at a very specific time when it's a full moon during a low tide. That will not occur again until later in July, and by that point, this concentration of troops will be noticed by the Germans, and they'll know what's coming. So Flagg says, okay, I'm looking at this weather report. It looks like you will have 36 hours of clear weather the next day. I think.
Yeah.
Because it's 1940s, right? It's the weather. Based on our best guess is that you will have 36 hours of clear weather when the invasion can go forward. So there sits Eisenhower, and it's one man has to make that call.
Yeah.
And he makes it based on Flagg's weather forecast. And thank goodness Flagg's weather forecast was accurate. And the landings went forward. In that window, they were able to get enough troops on shore to weather the storm, literally, until it came on through. And then they could really pour some troops in, because there was no real way they could wait for a month and expect it to be successful. So there's one small example
That's great,
of how
yeah.
weather forecast can totally change the course of history.
Yeah. Maureen on Facebook brings up the Dust Bowl. Could you, just in case people aren't familiar, what was this era of the Dust Bowl? What caused it? And I mean, just tell us a little bit about that. Who was always?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
All right, great.
But I'm no expert on this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you
jump in if I
jump
think
in.
of
I'm just going to give you the
something.
the surface.
Yeah,
The Midwest, right? It is people moved there and they realized that it was very much a fertile land because it was flat. It was the prairie. You know, there had been tens of thousands of years of good topsoil growing there. The problem is that it actually is kind of deserty. The Great Plains are kind of deserty in terms of the amount of water that's there over time. There's not a lot of water, but the problem is when water does come, it tends to come in deluges, and what happened is people move there, they begin farming, and because of the Depression, they have to grow more and more, and they have to start cultivating fields where the erosion situation isn't really the best, but they've got to get that crop in. Even if they only get to use that cultivated part of the field for one season, and then the rest of the topsoil washes away because of the cultivation. This takes place on a large scale. That coupled with incredibly dry, windy, but deluge-specific periods of the Dust Bowl. And so the wind comes in and literally blows the topsoil away. And so what happens is all these farms fail because the topsoil is gone, whether through erosion, whether through the wind blowing that hard. This in the middle of a national economic depression. So all these things combined, that's why all these farmers have to get out of that area and go somewhere where there's work, where there's a job. But, you know, if you don't have any money, how are you going to get a truck to get your kids and your family into the back of a truck and move what you can to go somewhere where there is work? How are you going to get money for gas? And so it's just, that's why that Dust Bowl is sort of that penultimate American experience during the Depression, right? Most of us have seen those photographs.
I was just about to bring
Yes, please do.
So we've got one where you can actually see like the dust. It's almost like it's chasing this truck. So let me put this in. Here we go. So we've got this one. So that looks kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because the wind comes whipping through the plains, as they say in the musical. Right.
in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So we've got that one, and then this is a picture of just the aftermath. I mean, look at all that. It's covering an entire car. Oh my gosh.
Right.
That's crazy. Wow. Man, so yeah, it's sort of a combination, as Scott on Twitch is saying. It's this, over-tilling of the soil, having the monoculture crops. I mean, it's
Right.
things that we still have to consider today, but it seems like it was just pretty devastating given the economic
Exactly.
devastation too. So, whew, yeah, that's an interesting combination of weather, economics, and agriculture all
Right.
coming together to create not so pleasant of a time.
And that's why grapes are wrathful.
That's Scott just said. Read Grapes of Wrath. Yeah, right. Yes. So if you're not familiar with Grapes of Wrath, then yes, it takes place during that
Yes.
era. Yeah, yeah. All right. So let's see. So folks, if you would like to ask a question, we don't have any questions in the queue, but I do have some questions until we get more. So feel free to chat your questions in the chat for Marie and Glenn.
Yeah.
So let's see. Yes, I had this question. So, what historic place do you want to visit that you have not visited yet? And you can't say the Bayeux Tapestry Museum because you already mentioned that.
Okay. I already have an answer.
Yeah, right. Right there. All right, you want to go?
I'll go while you think.
I think I know.
You already know?
I think I have one.
You want to go first?
Yeah, you can
Okay,
go
I'll go
first.
first. The Alamo.
The
Here's one that's
Alamo.
funny.
All right.
I grew up in Blue Ridge, which is in Fannin County. And growing up, two things happened. First, I was in Fannin County, and Fannin turns out to have been a Georgian who was involved in the Texas War for Independence.
Ah.
And so I had to go literally 200 feet from the historic marker in front of the courthouse to the library to find out who Fannin was. Number one. Number two, I used to watch the old John Wayne movie, The Alamo, with Dad because he loved that movie. So the Alamo and the War for Independence and all these things just sort of culminated when I was like 10, 12, 13 years old, right? And I became fascinated with going there. I have still not been. Here's how bad I wanted to go. When I was young, we didn't get to take vacations. I just knew that a honeymoon was a vacation you got to take when you got married. So I would always say that on my honeymoon, I'm going to the Alamo and I'm taking Mom and Dad with me so we can all go visit.
That's so sweet.
Priscilla didn't let me take them. to the
Aw.
Alamo.
But that would be really cool. Now, for those of us who are not familiar, could you just give us in a nutshell version of what was the Alamo?
What was the Alamo? So, for a lot of reasons, Texas begins to assert, the settlers within Texas, I should say, begin to assert a desire to start their own country, mostly because of the desire to create a slave-based plantation economy, which the Constitution of Mexico forbade. But that's not all there is to it. There's a lot more to it. And so they begin to fight against the forces of the central Mexican government under Santa Anna. And one of the places that they have a battle is the Alamo, where there are about 200 people that are trying to stop the forces under Santa Anna. Santa Anna goes in after slaughtering Fannin at Goliad, comes to the Alamo, attacks it, kills everyone inside, including David Crockett and Jim Bowie and William Barrett Travis, and moves on to attack what's left of the Texican army. Well, the Alamo becomes a rallying cry, and it's sort of become one of those defeats that win a war in terms of Texas independence, American mythology, and it's just everything's bigger in Texas, including their losses. So Alamo is the best, greatest loss in all of military history that turned out to be a godsend for the forces for independence in Texas.
Wow. That was a good in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Marie, what is what's a historic place that you haven't visited yet that you really want to?
I really want to visit the Palace of Versailles.
Oh, the Palace of Versailles. I
Why
wonder-
there?
Let's see. Yeah, why?
Okay, so full
looks
confession,
beautiful.
full disclosure, they have a historical ball there called Fête Galante, where basically you dress up in French court gowns and you get to dance in the Hall of Mirrors.
Is it like a mask? Like like the whole, like the mask and everything, and
You can wear masks,
but you don't have to.
but you don't have to wear
Okay.
And yeah, so this whole party, you dance in the Hall of Mirrors. In the theater, there's an opera going on that you can go and visit. They have fireworks at the end over the gardens. Also, my name's Marie, so I've always been interested in Marie Antoinette.
Yeah.
That doomed Queen of France who had beautiful dresses and a bad reputation for the past several hundred years that she does kind of deserve and also doesn't.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can give us a little information on her. I do want to just show a picture of, this is the Hall of Mirrors, apparently, so let me know if I got it right. All right. Does that look familiar? Yes.
Yep.
Wow. That is so ornate.
It's so pretty.
Do you know anything about, like, the architecture or, like, who?
Yeah, so this is Baroque architecture.
Okay.
Louis XIV built Versailles. He found this plot of land. Versailles had been a hunting lodge up to this time. There's like a little kind of, it's nothing hunting lodge.
It was only maybe like 10 bedrooms.
Yeah. You know,
a casual.
Yeah, just a place where you could go.
Just a place to go when you're king of France. And at this point in time, France is extremely powerful. And England and France always go back and forth. This is the time where France is doing good. It's doing really good. So good that Louis XIV has declared himself the Sun King, which means that he is the sun and everyone revolves around him, because at this time everyone did that. I am the state. He declared it's divine right to rule. He is the state. He is the monarch. He is France. So he needs a castle or a palace to surround himself, so people can revolve around him. And therefore, we have Versailles gets created. So Versailles, up to this point, had been a hunting lodge. He now designs this fabulous Baroque palace. Baroque, Rococo, it is ornate upon ornate upon ornate in design, but it's also very classical in style, as it is a lot of symmetry, a lot of thought going in, harkening back to Greek and Roman architecture a little bit, Palladian style kind of thrown in there too, for good measure. And you have, it's very modern. It's gigantic to prove France is like, I am the state, I am here. Also, it gets him out of the city a little bit, but it's big enough for all of his courtiers to come and be there. Not just to revolve around him, but so that he can keep an eye on them, to make sure that they're not plotting rebellion, to make sure that they still love him, to make sure that they have, like, their devotion is poured out to Louis XIV. This is also where we have the beginnings of some forms of ballet. If you go back to European folk dance, you can start to trace ballet as we know it today. Usually there is the French version of ballet and there is the Russian version of ballet. So we have French ballet coming out of French court dance that Louis XIV did at Versailles. Glen mentioned a masque. So a masque is basically a play that the royalty put on for themselves. They was usually just performed once, and it was basically just to amuse themselves, because what else are you supposed to do when you're royal? And it would be usually incredibly elaborate. They would have these giant dances going on, and this is another time where Louis XIV, you start having, ballet costumes, dance costumes, these mask costumes, and also he has this glorious, Sun King outfit that he likes to put on, or at least did once, and embodied being the Sun King of being France. So lots of important things going on in Versailles. As a person who did ballet for a very, very long time, I think it's interesting from that cultural perspective, as well as I love historical costumes, and I want to go frolic around Versailles, and that's the only time that you're actually allowed to do it. You're not allowed to wear costumes to Versailles except for that day. And also, I have always been fascinated by Marie Antoinette because she shares my name.
Yeah.
Not to get these people in line in front of you, but how do you get tickets to that?
You have to go to the Versailles website.
And
apparently, it sells out very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, I bet.
There's also tiers. So there's it's like royalty basically.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Right.
So there's tiers of royalty, there's tiers of these ticket things, and so the basic ones is you get to come in and you don't really get to do you get to do stuff, but not all that much, and then it goes up, and It goes up and up, and it gets
Well,
very, very expensive, very fast.
Like, what are we talking when you say very expensive?
Like $1,000.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Whew.
But that's like,
Gotta
I
be
think that's
royalty.
like one of the top ones.
Right.
Yeah, but-
yeah.
Where you get to do everything, and they give you champagne, and
Only 1,000?
you also
Only?
get to go like through private. They take you for certain levels. They take you on like a tour of like the palace and some of the secret rooms.
That's really cool. I mean, and just looking at the photos, I mean, it just seems like even just the outside of the architecture is
beautiful.
stunning. I did get a picture
It's
of
also
that
just
too.
gold.
Let me drop this in here. So we've got the outside of the Palace of Versailles.
And this is the back of it, y'all.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the
This is the
backyard.
backyard.
That's nuts. Wow. Well, I can totally understand why you would want to visit the Palace of Versailles.
Yes,
That's awesome.
So pretty.
Yeah.
So much money.
Well, in the after
Like,
times,
just sitting there.
perhaps.
Perhaps in the after times. I would love to go frolic about.
We need to work on Marie and tell her that she definitely needs to get the top tier when she goes, right, guys?
Yeah, right. Yes.
You're like,
yes.
I mean, when are you going to be in Paris again?
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
know. I was in Paris a couple summers ago, and I went to the Palais Garnier. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it is very interesting because it has a tiny, like, area, like a reception area that's based off of the Hall of Mirrors. So I got to like a
Oh.
little sneak preview
That's cool.
of something
Oh, cool.
that was like kind of like it, but not quite. And I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine going to like
The place.
the
real
place that
thing.
was
I
inspired
know.
by this.
Yeah.
There's something about, yeah.
That'd be awesome. Oh, Olivia says if I could go to a historic place and I would visit you guys. Oh, please do. We'll give you the $1,000 tour for
That's
free.
That's right.
So let's see. We only have a few more minutes. I did want to say that we are super close to meeting our January donation goal. So if y'all want to contribute to that, you can go to bit.ly/jangoal. I will also put this link in the chat so it's oh so easy to access. But we are trying to meet monthly goals, and it really does help us out, especially since this is still a challenging time, but we have also gotten so much support from y'all, and we so appreciate it. So we're happy that y'all are here just watching, but if you want to give, we certainly appreciate it. But we're just happy to have you here. So we do have a few questions. One is for me, yay, because it has to do with Juliette Gordon-Low. So let's see. Mary wants to know, what are Libba's favorite facts about Juliette Gordon-Low? There are a lot. I mean, so
This
for
is
y'all,
when we leave.
yeah, right, yeah. Bye. So, for anyone who's not familiar, Juliette Gordon-Low is the founder of Girl Scouts, and she is an absolutely fascinating woman. She's a woman who had such a different path in life, and an unexpected one, especially for her. You know, she grew up in Savannah, Georgia. She was of a wealthy family, not the wealthiest, but comfortable, and she, where do I even begin? I think you asked for fun facts. So just to give everyone the in a nutshell version, she eventually marries a very, very wealthy man named William Mackey Lowe, who was expected to marry royalty. So both families were not in total agreement with the marriage. Her father felt that, you know, she ought to marry a working man, and Willie was inherited his money, so he was not a working man. And of course, Willie's family was expecting him to marry the same status, and Juliette was not that status. So that's what brought her to England. Now, their relationship does not work out, but she still has this, you know, this time and connections and friends now in England. And one of those friends is Sir Robert Baden-Powell, or sometimes pronounced Powell. And he is the founder of Boy Scouts, and they become very close friends, and he helps her. He invites her to become a girl guide leader. So there were girl guides over in England, and eventually she takes this idea of girl guiding, and with support of Robert Baden-Powell, starts the American Girl Guides. Very quickly becomes the American Girl Scouts because the girls were insistent. They decided, you know, we're doing all the things that Scouts are doing. Why are we not called Scouts? But, so that's sort of the in a nutshell of Juliet Lowe. She started the Girl Scouts and really self-funded it for many years until you get ideas like cookie sales and actually like manufacturing the uniforms and selling those and everything to generate funds. But as far as fun facts go, you know, the things that really tickle me about Juliet Lowe, especially I should say Daisy, that's her nickname, and when I think of Daisy, I think of her childhood, and what I've learned is that she had so much sympathy for animals, and she always, and really in people in general, she wanted to help in any way she could, whether you were a little bird or a person, you know. And one of the stories that I learned is that when she was in school, at a boarding school, she came across a poor little sparrow that had died, and she just couldn't stand to think that this sparrow would not have a funeral. So she got her friends together, they made this cute little wooden box and you know, decorated it, and she had a funeral for the sparrow and even gave it a eulogy for the sparrow. And I just thought it really speaks to, you know, things you learn about her in her childhood. It's like she really is a child at heart for much of her life, and I think that's a huge part of why she was so successful with the Girl Scouts, because she got girls excited to learn and to, you know, think outside the box and think about careers, think about their own ambitions, and to care for one another. So she had a very gentle soul, and that's one of the things that I think speaks to her. And speaking of animals, she had so many pets. She had birds, she had a macaw, a big parrot named Blue Boy. It was a blue macaw. She had many dogs, big fan of smaller terrier dogs, hunting dogs as well. So she had a cat growing up. So I think her love for fellow living creatures of all sorts really speaks to Juliet Lowe. So that is my fun fact. There are so many though, and I do recommend if you have a chance to read her biography by Stacy Quarterly. I can actually put a link to it. It's really, really well written, and Juliet Lowe's life, like we were saying last week, there has to be a movie made by...
Yeah, there should be a movie.
So let me get that. The Remarkable Life of Juliet Gordon Lowe by Stacy Quarterly. The Remarkable Founder. There we go. So there we are. I'll put a link to this in the chat. It's an excellent book. All right. So next question we have is, and we'll need to maybe make this our last question. We'll see. So do y'all know anything about the Mormon Battalion out in the West? I am not familiar. The Mormon Battalion.
You know, I've heard of it, but I do not know enough to speak about it at all. I do not.
So something
Sounds
to study.
interesting. I will study up on that and answer
Yes.
next week. So whoever asked that question has to tune in next week.
Yes, that was Maureen, and so
Okay.
Maureen wants to know about the Mormon Battalion out west. That sounds really interesting. Let's see. So we've also got. Oh, are you familiar with the game of Go? I haven't heard of Go before.
No.
Great. We're
0 for 2 here at the end.
That's so funny. Let's see. Aw. Okay, I think we'll end it
We'll
there.
end it there.
Then. Yes.
Before I go into
so-
everything I know about quantum mechanics and
Yeah,
physics.
right. Thank you, Betty. Thanks for joining us. People are saying goodbye and thank you, JM, all the folks on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. Y'all had great questions today.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see. Fried. Thank you. Olivia had asked about chess. Now, are y'all familiar with the origins of chess at all?
Sort of, kinda. I mean, I know it goes way back, and then it has definitely evolved to what it is today from things that were different. I want to say it originally started in what is today the Middle East, perhaps India, and the different figures could move different ways. It wasn't always a king and a queen. It was more like a general and a lieutenant and the names have changed. The shape of the pieces has definitely changed. They've gotten a lot more boring. There's some historic sets of chess or chess sets. The figures are just, they're so cool. If you want to see something really cool, look up the Lewis chessman from the Isle of Lewis that they discovered in a cave. That is this carved. I can't remember if it's ivory. I think they may be ivory. These ivory pieces from circa the 11th century, 10th or 11th century, and they all look like Scandinavian warriors.
I think I found it. Let me
pull
let
one
me know
out.
if this is correct. These look really neat. Okay, let's see. So let me get the picture for us. The Isle of Lewis, right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I think this is what that is. Let me save the image. In the meantime, while I'm pulling that up, you have a live stream tomorrow, Glenn. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, actually, one of my favorite subjects, the American Revolutionary War in the South. And we all have heard of Bunker Hill and Monmouth and Trenton and things like that. All the battles you've heard of were in the North, but all the battles that mattered were in the South. So if you tune in tomorrow at 2, I'm going to explain to you why that is and how the course of the war went, down here in the southern colonies, and hopefully convince you that it really is the most interesting and important theater of the War for Independence.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. So that's tomorrow on Facebook and YouTube at 2 p.m. Eastern. And here are those pieces. I think that's...
Yes, that is them.
Yeah, so that's really cool. They're pretty detailed, too.
They're super detailed. You can see, like, the bishop is, an actual bishop in a chair. And the knight is actual mounted guy. And
that's really cool.
There's even one of the footmen... they think he's a berserker because he's a Viking-looking guy, and they always talk about berserkers being so ready for battle they would bite their shields. One of those figures actually has the guy kind of
that's funny. Wow.
biting the shield. That's very cool.
Nice. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you will be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern for Glenn's live stream about the American War for Independence in the South. And then on Friday, if you are a digital member or you become a digital member by Friday, then we're also going to have a program about famous spies. So that's super fun. And until then, we hope you stay safe and take care. And we will see you soon in the chat again. All right,
Bye, guys.
Bye.